Alright, my name is Garrett, and I will be responding to the claim, Quentin's claim that prohibition is unsuccessful in reducing the use of illicit substances. His secondary claims were that purity, variety, and availability of substances such as cocaine, opiates, and cannabis has gradually risen over the years as their value has declined. And two, that prohibition causes a variety of social problems. His argument is weak, and the supporting claims and evidence fail to warrant the claim that prohibition is ineffective in reducing the use of illicit substances. The first secondary claim fails to correlate the purity, variety, and availability of the drugs to the use of the drugs. The same evidence he used from CNN, which states that a team of Canadian and U.S. researchers have found an increase in factors such as purity and availability and a decrease in the price, also states that the researchers did concede their source data had limitations with price and purity patterns, a marker of drug supply that does not capture other factors that determine the availability and the use of drugs. Also, this report does not mention who was included in the team of researchers and what qualifications they possess to conduct this kind of research. In 2007, the same year the previously mentioned study ended, the Drug Enforcement Administration, the DEA, announced that the price for a pure gram of cocaine increased 47% from the previous year, 2006, and the price of a pure gram of meth jumped 84% from the previous year as well. This makes one question how reliable the unnamed team of researchers truly were and why their information directly contradicts the DEA's data. To expand on the issue of the availability of marijuana, CBS reports that 19 states and the District of Columbia currently allow people to purchase and be in possession of marijuana with a doctor's prescription. It is clear that this may be one of the several factors not taken into consideration by the team of researchers. In addition to being unreliable, this piece of evidence does not support the secondary claim. Moving on to the example of how the shutdown of the illegal market known as the Silk Road only increased the use of other websites. The shutdown of one source having caused the rise of others is somewhat expected. However, it is implied that shutting down a major source of drugs would indicate a reduction in their availability. Not to mention that there is no evidence to show that more people have started to use the drugs because of the shutdown. It is not proven or suggested whether the increase in other competitors' website usage is related to previous silk market buyers moving business to these sites, or the fact that new buyers are coming to the market solely because of the shutdowns. Pushing on, I will discuss the next secondary claim, that prohibition causes a variety of social problems. The secondary claim lacks conclusive evidence to show that prohibition causes social issues. The first evidence used was that America has the largest prison population in the world, with approximately 16% of people in state prison and 18% of people in federal prison for drug charges. This would indicate, however, that the other 84% and 82% respectively are not in jail due to drug charges, but are due to other crimes. Not to mention the entire purpose of prohibition is to apprehend those who violate the law. Therefore, having criminals in jail proves that prohibition is a proactive solution. Also, as mentioned in the original claim, there are about 4 million adults in the U.S. on probation at the end of 2011. However, it is not mentioned that according to the Bureau of Justice Statistics, the decline of 98,900 offenders during 2011 marked the third consecutive year of decrease in the correctional population. It was also said that organized crime flourishes after reaping profits. However, by shutting down main sources such as the Silk Road, there is an immediate decrease in the profits made through those means. Thus, prohibition is actually inhibiting more profits to be made. Moving forward, political corruption in foreign countries was attributed to prohibition. There is absolutely no evidence to back this up. Also, it was stated that there is an increase in the amount of violence related to drugs. However, the evidence provided that the FBI reports that there were about 400 to 600 drug-related murders a year between 2007 and 2011 was skewed. In the same data table provided by the FBI, there was actually shown to be a steady decline in the number of drug-related murders. Starting with 2007, there were 590, 500, 496, 474, and 390 murders from each year respectively, ending with 2011. That's a decrease of 200 people over a 4-year period. Either way, the murders occurring do not indicate that prohibition is the cause. In conclusion, the claim that prohibition is unsuccessful in reducing the use of illicit substances is not substantiated through the secondary claims due to a lack of evidence unclear assumptions, and incorrectly reported statistics. Thank you.
All right, interesting back-to-back arguments on that issue. Sorry about the timing. It's okay. It's not a big deal. I thought you ID'd the topic pretty clearly, or the proposition and the secondary claims pretty clearly. Signposting in the body of the speech was fine, although it did seem like I had number 2 points. That's because you treated the Silk Road argument that was part of the first claim as a second issue, and then it's followed by the other secondary point. So that was a little bit confusing organizationally, but I understood what it was that you were ultimately saying. I thought that there was a little bit clearer explanation about the whole issue of purity and availability, and how it doesn't have it's the prohibition is having an effect on those particular kinds of things. And you had some data that seemed to suggest, in fact, that the prices had gone up substantially for cocaine and for methamphetamines, and that would, that's you even kind of contrast the data to say, look, they give you data that's not particularly clear. I don't know that you can say, well, we don't know who these experts are. That's a reasonable question to ask. When you come to the argument, though, you're saying, look, we've got DEA data that talks about the price increases versus this somewhat ambiguous data that comes from a source that's not clearly identified. That's the reason that I think you ought to trust the one set of data. I think you explained that pretty well. Also, the explanation that a large number of states, for instance, have marijuana available for medical uses might have affected the use of, or the access to marijuana, with even though there is prohibition. I think that that's an interesting point. It seems to confound the statistics in this area, and I think you have an explanation of that that's effective. The Silk Road argument is an interesting side point. I don't know how much it advances either the advocate's claim or your claim. It's an interesting current event that's going on. I don't remember what the advocate's evidence was on usage, for instance. You seem to suggest that it doesn't really demonstrate that there was a change in the number of users, and that if there were a change, it's simply because new people are being drawn into other channels. Well, that would seem to like it would suggest that it supports the advocate's claim that the prohibition is actually increasing, or the problems that are going on there. On the social problem argument, I thought you had an interesting analysis of the prison issue. I thought that was fine. One thing that you might want to point out, though, is, by the way, the people who do go to prison for drug charges are not just drug users for the most part. They are people who are engaged in trafficking in drugs, and there's a lot of evidence that suggests that drug trafficking involves a whole variety of additional crimes. So the fact that you got them for drug trafficking doesn't necessarily mean that they are, they were just, some pothead who was selling to the local other potheads out there. They may, in fact, have been engaged in a variety of criminal activities, including importation, kidnapping, murder, armed robbery, a whole variety of things that go along with the whole trafficking thing. And so the notion that they're in jail on a drug-related crime doesn't necessarily mean that they aren't real crimes. I think that would be a legitimate argument to make. And the argument about the declining murders, it wasn't clear to me. Was that in a particular city?
It was in the U.S.
In the U.S. Wow. I'd have thought we had that many murders here in Southern California, not the whole U.S., that are drug-related. All right, well, that's an interesting statistic there. Okay, thank you.